set, new faces, half the star power.
True.
That's true. Well, Robbie is up at the Disc Golf Expo this week.
Boo.
I know.
Oh, we weren't doing that? Oh, sorry.
No.
I thought we were all going to boo him.
I'm good with that.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, okay. Yeah. So Robbie's out this week, so I have these two. I know a lot of your comments have said, hey, we'd love to have Trevor and Hunter back on and talk about their bag a little bit and what's changed. So you ask, and here they are.
Changing.
That's true. Before we get into it, though, I want to just thank Flippy Disc Golf for being the presenting sponsor of In the Bag. Thank you, Flippy. I don't know if you can see here, but I got my In the Bag hoodie on. Has a sweet schematic of everything to keep in your bag on the back. So make sure you check the link in the description to check out the new In the Bag merch. Trevor likes it.
Didn't even know that.
So make sure you check those out in the description.
Merch.
So again, we're going to go a little off of our typical, I guess, flow of the podcast. We're not really going to dive into their bags completely, but the main thing I want to check in with Hunter and Trevor, you know, we were talking this morning, Hunter, you guys, your bag changes all the time. And
Almost daily.
Hunter's changes a lot. It's actually, you caught me at a good time because mine doesn't change that much. And in the
Assy has more discs in front of him than me.
well, as I was to say, in the last year, for like the last year, it really didn't change. But then recently, I did make some key changes. So it's a good time to be looking at my bag.
No, that's great. Yeah, and I mean, I think it's one of the pros and cons, definitely, of working at a disc golf retailer, right? We see a ton of discs, we get to feel a ton of discs, and it's really tempting to switch them in and out, and it's, you know, just as easy to fall in love with them as it is to hate them.
If you talk to us after we go to the woods at Trinity in Texas, then we're going to have new discs in our bag.
Yes, because there's a lot in the water.
Yeah.
Yeah, right. So, you know, anything can happen. So want to take some time and go through. Trevor, I guess we'll start with you. So why don't you tell us a little bit about, like, what's new to your bag?
Okay. Everything here is pretty much new to my bag.
It's quite a few.
Yeah. So this is an ESP zone. It's just a stock zone, but it is custom stamped. This comes out today. So if you're lucky, what time is this going to come out?
5 p.m.
Okay. Well, then, good thing this is early in the episode. Hurry to foundationdisc.com, and you might still be able to get one of these. Just a stock ESP zone. I kind of put it in my bag just because we had it over here and to promote it and whatnot. And it flies very straight for a zone. I personally don't. I think that I'm a sucker for having like very exhaustive bags as far as like really covering every shot I might throw. And like for forehand approach shots, a lot of times I want like a straight with a little fade, and then one with a lot of fade. So when the Zone OS comes out, that'll be the one with a lot of fade and or the premium slammer. I'm not sure which one I'll use. But this one kind of fits in that middle, and they go kind of far, and it feels great in my hand. So I'm just kind of toying around with that one.
So before you get into your next one, you're kind of talking about, let's elaborate a little bit, because last episode we talked a little bit about bag building theory, and, you know, we talked about the basic of a neutral, understable, and overstable disc, and we talked about, you know, as you progress, like where I am right now is I have a straight, slightly understable, very unstable, and then the opposite on the overstable side. So where is that fitting with the rest of your approach disc, just so people can understand?
Right now, it's the most stable of them. Right now, I just have this and a slammer, and the slammer's beat up. It's not super often I need something more stable than that, but and I don't really think there's much offered more stable than a zone in that slot, other than the Saki Bomb Slammer, which is coming out in premium plastic, and the Zone OS. So those two discs would immediately jump into my bag, and this would kind of find itself in the middle a little more.
Okay. You
can get a bigger flex S's out of this. You throw it hard and flat, especially on a backhand. You can get it to go straight for a long time, throw it into wind like that. But I find it useful, and I like the way it feels in my hand and the way it flies. It's nice. It's not a disc I ever really considered bagging. This next one, this is a DGA Hurricane. So I've had Hurricanes in my bag in and out for a few years, and I think they're fantastic discs. They go really far. They are typically like Hyzer flip discs. They kind of remind me of a Zeus, but in my opinion, they're a little more comfortable. But this one is a Shasta Chris Tour Series one that had a cool die on it, and I'm throwing this a lot for forehands because it's a little less stable than like a Destroyer, so I can get a little more turn and distance out of it for forehands. And I could throw Hyzer flip backhands with it too, but it's been throwing a lot of forehands with the Hurricane. But Hurricane is very underrated. If you've never thrown a DJ Hurricane, Fantastic disc.
And if you're only listening, you're missing this disc. It's beautiful.
It is so gorgeous. I love it. It has a spin die on it, and I love spin dies.
I got burned by a hurricane.
You
that
did
exact run.
A real
Well,
one?
you got
Or-
he got no. This is not the same run. It was yours was a flex ESP.
but it had that stamp.
It did, but yours was a flex one. This one.
All I know is mine was a roller.
Yeah.
So that either says I have way more power than Trevor.
That was I've thrown I've thrown 3 hurricanes ever, and they've all been the exact same for me. So I think you got it back.
Well, here's it was brand new, off our shelf.
It literally
came in from them, and I threw it instant roller. So I will never throw the hurricane.
You are not helping my sales pitch right now.
Well, I'm just saying I don't.
Hashtag
I'm fine with like a little bit of variety in discs,
Yeah.
but if you can't make discs be the same every time, or at least like similar, like
So you're not going to throw a destroyer anymore?
A destroyer turns some, and some very overstable. I've never had a destroyer roll.
I bought a destroyer that was a roller straight out of the box.
I would if that happened to me, I would never, because I would just think I can't. I don't know if I can replace this disc anymore.
Yeah, I mean that's fair.
I've never had a destroyer roll
It's
out
fair.
of the box. I would love to have one.
I had it.
That would probably make me that if I threw it and it rolled on me,
college.
I don't think I'd ever put a destroyer back in my
It
bag.
happened to me in college. It was a purple 4-time Paul Destroyer roller. Like it was the flippier than a strike right out of the box. Crazy.
Yeah, it's never happened to me.
In any case, this destroyer is new to my bag. This is like a double stamp of the Bogey Bros run we just did. Brad, do we have any more of those?
Yeah, there's still some.
There's still some on the site. This is a really good run, and all of the destroyers from this run were exactly the same. They all looked exactly the same, felt exactly the same. So yours should fly like this one. A little bit of a dome to it, not crazy overstable. They glide quite a bit, but reliable. Like I mean, I was throwing this one over water yesterday and like wasn't having problems with it. Really good destroyers. They're fun.
They feel great.
Yeah, it's a really good run. Some fairways that are new. I've got this KJ Swirl Star T-Bird, and this one was beaten a little bit. I traded a guy for it, and I really just like the stamp on this disc. And I mean, T-Birds are great discs. Like I'm not like a T-Bird fanatic, but it's a great disc. This one just kind of goes straight. A disc I recently came across in our U section, the best find I've ever seen come in there. This is a KC Pro Cheetah. And this is not KC Pro plastic as you know it. This is back when they first made it, and this is essentially CE plastic or Champion Edition plastic, which is like a first iteration of Champion plastic to help new viewers out that don't really know about the Innova stuff. But the Cheetah, this one I was really beat in. And I assumed it would be flippy, but it's not. It kind of just Hyzer flips to flat. And I put it immediately in my bag, mostly because it's just such a cool disc. Like, it's very rare, and I love that. But it does genuinely fly pretty nice. My fairways overlap a lot right now. I'm kind of still sorting that out.
So did either of those two discs bump anything out of your bag to go into it, or you just kind of throw them in there?
So I did have an it in my bag that I just was never throwing, and I have another option in the understable fairway department in a leopard that I have. So I probably tossed that one out to put in this Cheetah. But yeah, the fairways, I'm still tinkering around. There's still some overlap, but I just find that I don't throw certain shots. So I don't really, I'm the type of guy, like, I'm just not going to cater to, well, it's like two parts of my brain that fight. The part of my brain that fights and says, no, I might need that shot. And the part of my brain that says, no, cater to a different, like a disc that overlaps a slot that you're actually going to use more often. Like, don't worry about a slot you're never going to throw. And I definitely am the type of guy who believes in, and this is just the way I play, especially in tournaments, there is every reason to have similar discs that you like in your bag. Like these discs, I can throw both these discs to get similar shots out of them. Mm-hmm. They're different. This one's a little more understable, and I have an FD in my bag that gets even closer to this Cheetah as well. But those are discs that are my straight fairways. A disc that you need a lot. And if I lose one, that's a problem in a tournament. And also, usually in a tournament, you're going to pick up a disc, and if you're throwing it well that day, you're just going to keep reaching for it. Mm-hmm. And so I like to have that option of being like, yeah, I just keep reaching for the T-Bird today because it's working. And yeah, it's like logic versus just like superstition, I guess, fighting against each other. But that's kind of how my fairways are right now. I've got a Judge that's new to my bag. This is a 10-year Lucid Ice Judge. Mm-hmm. I always go away from the Judge as a throwing putter and then immediately come back. Well, not immediately. I eventually come back because I'll just take it out of my bag for no reason other than something else exciting came out. But I genuinely throw these better than any putter, and they are so fantastic. They go so straight, but you can throw them with like any or a ton of torque and they won't burn over. They just go dead straight. They just kind of hold. They're super neutral, amazing throwing putter, and they have such a great shelf life. I mean, I have judges that were like, I got my first judges when I was like 14, 15 years old, and I've through them for years and years and years, and they still aren't like flippy. Like they have a really good shelf life, fantastic throwing putter. Probably my favorite putter ever made is the Judge.
Have you thrown like an Eclipse Proxy? Would you compare it?
Not that stable.
Not that
stable. It's more of a straight disc that is reliable in the sense that it won't burn over. But you throw on a Hyzer, it'll stick to it. Like you can get it to go left, but not like that. Another disc is in my bag. This is a Rainmaker. This is the one, I believe this comes out on the 26th or 27th, somewhere in that range.
That's correct.
Discmania was kind enough to send me some. I've been putting with Rainmakers. I'm doing that the whole year. These ones are Color Glow, D-Line Flex 3, a little bit stiffer, and yeah, that's probably about it. They're just a little more rigid than the last run. That wasn't Color Glow. That were just normal glow, and I like it better. So yeah, I literally have only played one round with them.
And you're coming off of the steadies. How does it feel? Like how do you feel like confidence wise and like hand feel compared to the steady?
It doesn't really matter that much for me. I will say these ones, they gave me some lighter ones this time around. The last ones were really heavy. I wasn't really liking that. I like these better. These ones feel very good to me. I'm excited about these. I don't really mind though. I mean, the steadies, I've grown very used to them, obviously using them for a year after that long, but I'm not really like, I'm not good enough at putting for it to matter. So you got to get really good at putting for I feel like that is a huge barrier. The last disc, this has been in my bag for a little bit now, but it's somewhat newer, and I didn't throw a Buzz for a long time, but this is a Z Buzz. I don't really care that much for the Buzz when it's brand new. I'd rather throw rocks in that stage. But when you get one that's beat in like this, and this one was already beat in when I got it, they are fantastic. They go super far. They're really easy to Hyzer flip. If you throw them hard, you just know they're going to get up to flat and maybe turn a little bit. I absolutely love this disc. It's been like the mid-range. It's the disc in my bag that I probably look to reach for more than anything else, where I'm like, can I throw the Buzz on this hole? Because it's fun. It's just a fun disc. So if you've never really found a Buzz that's really worn in, they're fantastic.
I think the good thing about that is you can probably go into any used section and find a beat-up Buzz.
Yeah, it's not super difficult to find. And like I said, brand new Buzz, there's nothing wrong with it, but it's not something that like calls my name. Beat-in Buzz, fantastic.
Cool.
So,
well, yeah, it looks like a lot of stuff, and like you said, I think your bag ebbs and flows, and I think it's something important to point out about you that I learned is you pretty much release, unless the shot calls for it, pretty straight, and you want the disc to do or shape the shot pretty much rather than you shape discs that maybe aren't necessarily supposed to do what
yeah,
they do.
I am at my best when throwing flat shots, and just if I want a disc to go left to right, a lot of times I'm just going to throw it flat and let the disc slowly turn, and I'll throw something a lot more stable. Or even like I do better from flat to Annie than I do from the Hyzer down. If it's just a wide open Hyzer, I'm fine with that. But anything that's going to Hyzer flip to flat or Hyzer flip to turn, not my strength. I will say there are certain discs like that Buzz that are kind of in my bag to encourage me to practice those shots, because that Buzz is best. I almost never throw it for flat turnovers. I almost always throw it for Hyzer flips to turn or Hyzer flip to flat.
Yeah.
So that I have certain discs like that one and the FD that's in my bag that are kind of there to encourage me to throw that shot, because I like throwing those shots, but it's something I have to improve at. But a lot of the discs I have, I'm throwing flat.
Yeah, and I think again, as I'm growing like that, I think at some point I was just trying to throw how I threw and then get the shots I needed. Now that I'm fixing my form a little bit, I'm thinking a lot more about like, hey, what is this disc really intended to do? Not what was I making?
Because some discs just are not good on certain lines. Like the FD, for example, throwing that disc flat, you can get a turnover out of it, but there's nothing special about that. That disc is really going to excel when you pump it on Hyzer and get it to pop up, and then it goes super far and super straight. This T-Bird, in the stage of wear that this T-Bird is right now, it's a better disc when thrown flat, because on Hyzer right now, it's just stable enough that it's kind of touchy whether I'm going to get it to pop up or not pop up, because the T-Bird wants to be stable. Yeah. So this disc right now in its stage is best thrown flat and hard, and you get a nice turn to maybe a little fade at the end out of it. So that's kind of my thing is there's certain discs, almost every disc in my bag, there's probably only one way that I'll throw it, maybe two for some discs, but like a lot of them, it's like I'm only throwing this disc for one angle almost all the time.
Okay. All right. Now, Hunter, maybe tale of two bags here, if you will. Let's talk about your new additions, and then I would like to elaborate kind of on your like theory on releases. 'Cause I think yours is different than Trevor's, if I'm not.
Trevor and I are completely different.
Okay, that's what I thought. I didn't want to assume, but tell us about your new additions to your bag first.
First off, what I was learning and I was thinking through, because Trevor always points out how many drivers I carry, and I'm always like, it's so weird to me. Like it feels normal, but Trevor carries so many like slower speeds, and I think I figured it out. Trevor and I think of, we flip how we think of a bag. My distance drivers are the shots that distance and fairway are the ones I like to have something to cover everything, because I'm going to throw them all on slight hyzer to a lot of hyzer, and I want the discs to all react differently. Right. Whereas that for Trevor, I think is his approach game a lot more. Whereas my approach game, like this ESP Zone's a new addition to my bag. When the Zone OS comes out, one of the two is staying. I will never have two of that slot, because when my arm is slower, I'm way more comfortable adjusting angles, especially on forehands. Got it. Yeah. So my slow discs do a lot for me. I'll ask a lot out of my slow discs. My faster discs, I'm not comfortable with.
Your logic, I think, is way more correct. The reason I do that is way more of my weird obsession with slower discs. Like I love putters so much, for example. But what you're saying about like it's easier to set angles at slow speeds and change that.
That's just my game. I wasn't trying to say
that's perfectly logical. That makes way more sense. I would take your advice a heck of a lot more than mine. Like you should. The faster discs are the ones that are take way more precision and also can get you in a lot more trouble. Those should be the ones you cover your bases with before worrying about the slower disc. Because from 100 feet, there's only so much that's going to happen.
Yeah, that's how I've always built my bag. Is like I carry an overstable mid, I carry some neutral mids, and then I carry a flippy mid. And then approach shots, I have like one slightly overstable putter, one flippy putter, and one forehand putter. And that's it. That's my base bag. Everything else, fairways and up, I have a really flippy fairway, a kind of flippy fairway, a flip up to flat fairway, a somewhat overstable fairway, a really overstable fairway, and then I do the same for distance drivers.
Interesting.
So I attack my long, because those shots, I know when I speed up, I'm going to release on hyzer. I need the disc to do the work for me.
Gotcha.
Whereas when I'm going slow, like especially my forehand approach disc, I can release a forehand when I'm throwing slow on any angle, and I'm very comfortable with it. I can't do that when I'm throwing a fast forehand. So when I speed up, like my photon is like my forehand disc, that thing's coming out on slight hyzer or flat. So I need the disc to work for me, because I'm not throwing a fast anti-forehand. It's just going to go right. So that's kind of how I've always looked at my bag. So that's why I'm more like my mids, I've switched two out, but my mids and approach shots, this is pretty much my whole lineup. Just throw in some MD3s and a hex that really shouldn't be in there. Either one of the MD3s or the hex. But then the like fairways and stuff is where I get complex.
Okay.
But ESP Zone, I lost my Toro. Saw this one sitting on my shelf at home. It feels really good because it's concave. So I put it in my bag.
ESP Zone's a vibe.
It is very unique. I'll give it that. Very, very much forehand or backhand straight for a long part, and still has that zone finish. So when the Zone OS comes in, it's going to go in my bag. And there might be a small period where both are in my bag and I mess with it. But if I had to guess, the Zone OS can be too overstable. And I'm just never going to, because I'm very comfortable powering down on my my Omen or my Captain's Raptor. That's how I've always attacked those like really overstable
That is one
shots.
thing you do that I do not like.
And so I like powering down on this, and I feel like that is going to be my Zone OS. So the Zone OS is going to go in my bag to test it out.
Yeah.
But I feel like this is going to be the lineup I end up with. Is this disc I rotate out all the time, just an overstable approach disc, because it's an overstable approach disc.
Right.
I'm comfortable with a lot of them. I'll throw the Harp, Razor Claw, Entropy, Zone. They all feel good to me. I throw them all. The next one I'm going to try is the Savior. But the Omen kicked out the Captain's Raptor and the Firebird for me currently. Feels great. We got a lot of board flat ones. I really like this plastic, and the stamp of this Tiger's sick. And it's been flying great for me. This is actually like a 160 gram one. It's still very overstable. Yeah, so I've been loving that. The method I put in, because I lost a monthly match, or I lost something. No, the Discmania versus MVP video. I lost that, and I had to put a certain amount of Discmania discs in my bag. So I don't even know what I took out to put this in, but I took out an overstable mid and put in the method, and I've really been liking it. I still don't fully know what it does, but I haven't thrown it on a shot and it does something that I'm like, didn't expect it to do that. I feel like that's kind of when I start not trusting a disc. So I still trust this disc as of now. And I parked a few holes with it yesterday, which makes me trust it even more. So I've been liking it. It's not crazy overstable by any means. It's like a good overstable MD3, but with the new MD3s, you just can't find that anymore. So I like the method.
And I love this next one. Yeah.
DX Wolf was one of my all-time favorite discs when I first got into the game. And then for a Patreon video, shout out to our Hyzer Club members. We did like Trevor built my bag with evil intent, and this is one of the discs he put in there, and I fell in love with it again. So the uplink's gone. Flies just like the uplink.
Pretty much your uplink,
Flies dead on like the uplink, but it's way cooler to pull the Wolf out than an uplink. So that's why that's in my bag. And then this Passion kind of flies like my Mockingbird, which is still in my bag. So I'm gonna have to do some soul searching and figure out which one stays, because this Passion's flying incredible. Hyzer flip really up, nice, little turn. I can throw it on a lot of Hyzer, get to slowly pop up. I love flip up fairways, and that's what this one's doing for me. So yeah, I've been really enjoying it. Again, the Mockingbird is very similar, so one of the two will end up being kicked out, but yeah, that's where I'm at right now.
So I know Trevor said he's leaning heavily on like that buzz, or you're wanting to pick up that buzz a lot lately. What's that disc for you? Oh, he's digging.
This MD3.
Yeah.
So the problem is these two discs fly very similarly.
It's a Hex
this one's
and
flippier.
MD3.
The Hex is a little flippier. And I'm very good with both of them right now. I'm very comfortable with both of them. So they're both in the bag because, like, basically if I need something to go dead straight, I'll go with this MD3. And if I need something to turn a little bit, I'll go with the Hex.
Yeah.
But they don't need to both be in my bag, because I can throw this flat to get the Hex shot out of it, and I can throw the Hex on a little more Hyzer to get the MD3 shot out of it. So one of the two of them's coming
That's
out.
kind of that slot, though. See, that's the difference between you and I. Is like you see that as an opportunity to put a different disc in your bag, which is valid. But like that is your most thrown shot, is that mid range shot. So like in my bag, I'm thinking, well, it's okay to have two discs that overlap here.
That's why I like having. Like, what I'll do is if that Hex comes out, a third MD3 will go in, because I like them all being the same disc. Because basically the problem that'll happen, at least in my bag, is when I have a bunch of mids, I'll get hot with the Hex, but then I need to throw something a little more overstable, but I'm hot with the Hex. So what I like to be able to do is if I take the Hex out and I get hot with the MD3, then if I need to throw something a little more stable, I have a disc that feels the exact same that I can just step up. So that's why I'll probably go back to my archive of MD3s and find one that's just like a hair flippier, so that these three will all overlap. That way, if I lose one in a tournament or something, I can still accomplish it, but they'll all be the same disc. So that way, if I get hot with my mids, I feel comfortable all the way across the board. The toughest MD3 to find and replace nowadays is that overstable one, because like these new C-Line MD3s, they're sick. But they're 5501.
You gotta get one of the
back in the day,
the Metal Warriors.
Yeah, back in the day, these had the same flight numbers as a Rock 3. It was 5503. It's then, while it was still with Innova, switched over to a 5502 because they realized it was getting flippier. Now the new C-Line 5501. That's just not what I want the MD3 to do.
Right.
Feels still just like an MD3, flies great. I'm just not looking for a buzz.
Right.
So
okay, and that's the two. We kind of talk about that on the podcast all the time. There's really the two schools of thought. It's like, do you carry 5 discs that cover each of the slot, or do you find something that has a lot of plastic that you can really manipulate and like, or get different levels of wear and tear and beat-inness?
In my opinion, if you want to be good, you go different levels of beat into the same disc.
Yeah.
If you want to have fun, you pick as many molds as you can.
Absolutely.
Exactly, yeah. Because like you said, you alluded to it, but Robbie talks about all the time subconscious confidence of the feel of that disc and what it's going to do. So you're automatically going to trust it even if you need.
The only thing I would say to that is you do need to be careful about when you. So let's take like the fairway slot for example, and let's say you like Thunderbirds, and you have like 3 Thunderbirds in your bag, and you're trying to like use as many Thunderbirds to cover as many slots as possible. You got one that's brand new and it's really overstable. You got one that's a little bit straighter, and then one that even flips up. I would say the only thing to be careful of is like, even if you're mold minimalizing, just because you have the ability to have a Thunderbird that flies like a roller doesn't mean you should necessarily, because that will be the hard one to replace. Once you get too far away from the original disc, that's when you need to make the split and say, okay, now we're going to go to a T-Bird.
That's what I'll never have an MD3 be my Wolf.
Right.
And I'll never have an MD3 be my zone or slightly more than method.
It gets to a point where you may need to go to a different mold.
Bookends, like, could I find a PD that flew like this Omen? Absolutely. But the problem is
You won't be able to replace it.
I won't be able to replace it.
Yeah.
So the bookend, you're also only pulling out that roller shot or the overstable fairway or that really overstable shot, really understable shot for like trick shots or unique get out of trouble shots. And typically that's not something that you're trying to like inspire confidence because you're hot.
Right.
Typically that means you're in trouble
yeah.
and you need to be getting out of something. So
Right.
I think the middle slot is where you can like really dial it in. But when you're first starting, because I wanted to cycle Thunderbirds for a long time, you can't just throw 3 Thunderbirds in and cycle them. No. So what I had to learn to do, and what other people will have to learn to do, is like, we'll use the Thunderbird as an example now because now this is capable. You take the Thunderbird and then you get something like a Savant. Or in my case, it was a CD2 that feels very similar to the Thunderbird, but already has that edge knocked off.
Yeah.
So you have that similar hand feel. It's in the same plastic you like. You're used to it. It's not like I'm going from a Thunderbird down to a Passion and I'm just throwing 2 completely different discs, but it already has that edge knocked off. So it's a lot easier to get to that flippy part while you're waiting for that Thunderbird to get flippy.
Right.
Because that is, I mean, losing a flippy KC Pro Rock or Flippy Destroyer, it's detrimental. It hurts.
Right.
Well, yeah, and I mean, I know it's not as rare, but I have a vulture that does not fly like a vulture that I would be devastated if I lose because it's almost flippy, and a vulture should not be flippy, especially for me. So, well, that's good. That kind of brings us to our next portion here. I appreciate you guys walking through that. I think it's just helpful for everyone. They see you throw a ton of different discs all the time.
Spoiler alert, by the time this episode comes out later this afternoon, I'll probably have a different bag.
That's true. He has discs under here he's ready to put in. So
I'm actually just putting different discs in my bag right now.
Right, yeah.
He's going back.
Yeah, so just keep an eye out for that.
A carousel.
Hey, and if you want to have an opportunity to change their bags, make sure you're a Hyzer Club member because Hunter just posted today they're choosing his putter.
On the chopping block. It's gotten a little too flippy, so I'm looking for a more like neutral straight putter. Put this back on the collector shelf. My favorite run of PA3s by far, but I'm just not looking for a flip up and turnover putter. I just never really throw that shot, and so that's what this has turned into. So I'm looking for just a straight putter, and our Hyzer Club members are choosing it right now.
Yep. So I'm excited to see what that looks like. So yeah, I mean, we dug through your guys' bags. I just want to hit you with a couple, not rapid fire questions, but some shorter answer questions to kind of round out the episode. Again, we don't get a lot of opportunity to have both of you on at one time. So I know there's a lot of knowledge and time spent, playing disc golf between the two of you. So first
we have a combined experience of 25 years.
Right. You're a 20-year-old in your experience.
I've got 10. We got what, 8, 9?
I got 8. Yeah, we got a combined experience 18 years. That's still, hey, that's
you didn't have to lie. That sounds.
I was just making a joke, but you know what? Combined experience of 18 years ain't too bad, huh?
There's a lot of knowledge here.
I have never been so mediocre at anything I've been doing for 10 years, and there's not many of those things.
I got 2 years to get good before I can say that statement.
Like, oh my gosh.
Yeah, for a decade. Whew. Wow. Okay. First question. We'll go Hunter. Well, you first here. How do you know when you should take a disc out of the bag?
As soon as you stop trusting it. When you step up to a line and you're like looking at the line and you want to go to that disc, but you have a like subconscious thought of it might turn over and burn me, or it might Hyzer out too much, get that thing out of there.
Yeah. I would say for me, it's like if you go through your bag, if you just like kind of, you're fanning through your bag and you see a disc and you go and you think to yourself, I don't almost ever throw that disc. And then you think to yourself, and then you're deciding if you just take it out of your bag and your brain stops you because you have sentimental reasons. That's when you get it out of your bag.
Right.
Because that's how I feel about certain discs is like, you'll be thinking, you're like, I'm never throwing it. Because if you're never throwing a disc, like kind of goes with Hunter's thing. If you're never throwing it, there's a reason you're not throwing it. You're just not picking it. And that's just like certain discs just will not be appealing to you for whatever reason. You just won't pick them. And then you have to decide, like, is this because that shot just hasn't popped up for me lately, or is this because it's only just sticking in there because I either forgot about it or because I have sentimental reasons? And at that point, once you stop throwing a disc, then it just needs to be gone.
Yeah, and from someone we've all been hurt by losing our favorite disc. You will lose it. So take it out. If you're afraid of losing it, take it out.
Yeah, if that's why you're not throwing it, then definitely.
Most of the discs on the wall behind us were in my bag at one point.
Yikes.
And I just got scared I was like, I can't lose this thing. So it's on the wall.
Well, you're smarter than I. My zone is resting at the bottom of a puddle somewhere.
Yeah.
Dang.
All right.
Puddle.
It's a big puddle. Tim Brook, hole 2.
Get freaky puddle.
Yeah. Yeah, poor thing. Anyway, what disc did you find late in your disc golf career that you wish you would have found sooner?
I found a few recently. I would say a big one, and it's not even one that I guess like my immediate answers would go to discs that have just been invented recently, which would be the Wild Honey, from Clash Discs, and the Warbird from Lone Star. But as far as a disc that has existed for a long time and that I've just recently put in my bag, I would say I found the drone early in my career. I would say the Eagle is not a bad one. I threw that one a little bit. I had an Eagle that I really liked when I was first into disc golf, but then for a long while, it wasn't really in my bag. That disc is very good. I would say, honestly, though, the biggest answer is probably just the buzz, really, because for the longest time, I didn't realize how good the buzz could be once it was worn in. And I think there are certain if you ever hear about a disc that is like hyped to the moon, and you give it a try and you're just like, not really a huge fan, you should try it in different stages of wear. Now, if a disc just doesn't feel comfortable in your hand, then just don't forget about it. Because don't ever mess around with a disc that just doesn't feel that comfy, but you're trying to convince yourself to like it. Just don't throw it. There's too many discs that do the same thing. Just find discs that feel comfortable in your hand. There shouldn't be a single disc in your bag that you hold and you're like, yeah, I like how this flies, but I just don't like the way it feels. Then don't throw it.
There's enough options.
There's enough options. They're all just straight vultures. But the buzz in a beat-in state is really fun and really useful. So I wish I would have found that earlier.
Yeah. Do you feel like you had a bias though, being like an Innova player throwing rocks? You're like, I'm not touching buzz.
So a buzz, when I first got into disc golf, that first Christmas where I got a whole bunch of discs to try, the buzz was one of the few Discraft discs I tried, and because obviously I knew about it, and I remember throwing it, and it just never really stuck for me. It just never really stuck. And then I tried it a few times later. Like when I first joined Foundation, we were all Discraft, and so I was throwing buzzes, and I kind of leaned towards the Wasp. But I never really had one that was beat in, and that's kind of been the secret.
Gotcha. What about you, Hunter? What disc do you wish you'd have found sooner?
A little bit of a cheater answer because it didn't exist, but I wish it did when I first got into the game, was the Soul. The Soul just fits my play style.
Bag, bro.
Well, no, because I throw too hard now that I can get other discs to accomplish it.
I see what you're saying.
But I'm saying, like, when I first got into the sport
That's a good
and
answer.
throwing on the Hyzer, like, the Soul would have saved me so many strokes. So I was trying to force a buzz, and then I switched to the Rock. I went to a Mako 3, and none of it, like, I couldn't get any of it to flip up unless I was throwing, like, DX really beat it.
Makos were always ruthless. They took so long. And the Mako 3 wasn't too bad, but a stock Mako,
it was meant to be thrown flat.
Oh my
flat
gosh, dude. They were so stable at
I
first.
would throw them Hyzer, and they just flew
were
like rocks.
so stable.
The Soul would have saved me a lot because I would have learned to Hyzer flip a lot earlier.
It's interesting. Yeah, I think that's a great disc. I know when people come into the store here, that's usually a disc I lean on recommending. If
The
they're a
Soul is
newer
very
player.
fun. I love the Soul. I would put it in my bag right now. It's a great disc.
I think it's also an easy disc to like get used to holding a disc golf disc versus like a frisbee.
Yeah.
I think it feels good for a beginner as well.
It's like the perfect beginner mid-range.
Yeah.
All right. So, what do you feel? Let's kind of go to like a little more theory-based stuff. What do you feel like is the biggest setback for new players when they're trying to gain distance?
Disc selection, 100% disc
Yeah,
selection.
it's pretty much only disc selection.
That's it.
Yeah, and I think a lot of people, including myself, initially you're like, "Oh, my form's bad. I'm not throwing hard enough."
Most of that is going to be true, but that's not the biggest thing holding you back.
Yeah. But so you would agree, or you would argue that you need to have the right disc, then learn those things versus like. It's a combination, really. I guess is what you're saying.
Find the right disc and also play to your strengths too, because like some people, like Hunter, for example, is just much better at throwing Hyzer flips than I am. I'm much better at throwing like big and Hyzer flex shots for distance. Like if you take Hunter and I and tell us to throw a distance shot, I'm gonna immediately go to a Sky Annie flex, and he'll normally go to more of a Hyzer flip play.
Always.
Yeah, so like that,
I lose distance on.
So like play to your strengths, because that's just the case for some people. Paige Pierce, for example, throws those S shots really, really far, whereas a lot of other FPO players will go to the Hyzer flip. So I think, but that goes to disc selection too. You got to figure out which one works. But with distance, like as soon as you like throw all of the speeds, sure, give them a try, but as soon as you see that the gapping between like right now, if I were to throw a 13 speed as far as I could, and that might go a little over 500 feet as far as I could. And if I were to throw a 9 speed as far as I could, there'd probably be 30 to 40 feet, I would say. Maybe 50. That's pushing it. But like enough of a difference that like that that will make a significant difference on certain holes, right? Like that's enough that's deciding if I'm making a putt or not, basically, or if I have a putt or not. But if you throw a 13 speed and a 9 speed, and one is going only 10 feet further than the other, the 13 speed, you're not getting it up to speed at that point. That's like you should be your immediate, and then at that point, guess what? Congratulations. You have no need to throw those discs that aren't as comfortable as the lower speeds, and you'll be more accurate and better. So I think like that's the big one, is just like, don't worry about faster speeds if they're not really gaining you a noticeable difference off the tee.
I think another problem is if you try to force yourself to throw the destroyers, throw the forces,
You'll develop bad habits too.
you'll develop bad habits.
Because you're throwing them like
because you're going to have to crank over, especially, I mean, the amount of forehands that come out on severe knife angle ante, and that's all the person can throw because they started throwing Firebirds and destroyers when they needed to be throwing leopards and freaking strikes.
If the basket is in front of you and you find yourself throwing any shot that S's, like if it's a straight shot, then there's a problem. You need to throw a more understable disc. I would like, if I'm getting somebody into disc golf, I am not letting them even think about touching an overstable disc for a while, because you are going to learn so much more about how a disc flies throwing flippy discs. And
you can make them do everything.
And Hunter and I just went out there for the Patreon video, and we picked just the flippiest disc for each other, and you can still throw almost all the shots with even the flippiest of discs. You can still throw a lot of shots.
More Hyzer.
Power down on them, throw more Hyzer. So you're going to learn so much more. You're going to get more distance, and it's a better way to play disc golf than fighting against the disc, which is what a lot of people do.
Yeah, and I heard you, like, when I first started at some point, when you guys were doing a warehouse walkthrough, you recommended a flippy disc for a forehand for
Absolutely.
somebody.
Yeah.
Changed my life. Like, I could not throw a forehand off the tee. I could throw approach shots, but I'm throwing like 250, 300-foot forehands now because I'm throwing a lift. I'm throwing something very, like, not very flippy, but flippy
Make the
enough.
discs work for you.
If you want to just walk out there and score as well as you can right now, ignore everything we just said.
Right.
Because you're gonna be more accurate throwing a Firebird like this and having it chop out.
Right.
But if you want to actually get better, then you got to get that out of your game, because what a flippy forehand forces you to do is actually develop a forehand, where you actually have to have touch and finesse to throw it flat. You actually have to learn how to keep your hand on the right angle.
And guess what? This angle is always going to be easy. It's always easy to throw. It's always going to be there.
It's not like out of nowhere you're going to be like, oh, well, now that I can throw it on Hyzer, I suddenly can't chop. No, you can always chop.
That's the easiest.
Because that's how you just naturally throw everything. You got to learn the weird throw.
A baby learns to throw that way.
And the pros, they are doing the same thing. Like, they're making those discs work for them as well. They just throw way harder.
They throw far. Yeah.
So like when that force flips up and turns for, whoever, Paul Macbeth, he's making that disc work the same way I would throw a Hurricane, a much flippier disc, and let that do the work for me. Like you should, throw smooth and let the disc like do its thing. And that's a way more fun way to play disc golf. You're not going to feel like you're gassing yourself just trying to like lean into discs to get them to go anywhere before fading.
One of the all-time greatest pros in our sports history, Barry Schultz, said, slow is smooth. Why are you laughing?
I said, who?
Oh, Barry Schultz, incredible pro, local North Carolinian. Slow is smooth, smooth is fast, fast is far.
Yep.
It's true.
That's the name of the game.
Great advice.
It's true.
Slow down to go faster.
I'm definitely feeling that now. I'm working. Robbie gave me a tip, which we'll touch on. We won't elaborate on these, but Robbie gave me a tip for my backhand. I was getting a lot of snap out of my hand, which, you watch the pros play and you hear the snap off the tee every time. So I was working on that. Well, it turns out my weight was being carried in my middle fingers, and I was death gripping those, and it was holding back my distance like immensely. And he pointed out to me, Paul, when he does his warm up, he kind of like flips his disc out with his front two fingers, and almost in a way to remind himself that you don't have to like death grip these. I'm sure he does it for a different reason, but that's what Robbie pointed out to me. And like, I've added 50 feet of distance just by doing that, and I'm doing slow. I'm not worried about pulling through as fast as I can. I'm more worried about that whip at the end and not death gripping my disc. So that's been very helpful for me so far. So very quickly, Hunter, what's a backhand tip you can give our listeners? Just a quick, easy backhand tip.
Generic backhand tip.
And Trevor, if you have one, feel free to jump in.
I got one. I would say, and Hunter would agree with this because he's the best at it really, is I would say have a consistent run up when you're backhand. Hunter always picks out the back right of the tee pad. He is very consistent in the way angle he runs up at. Now, you're going to adjust your angle in severe situations, but off the tee, right, should always be level if the course is any good.
Yeah.
So I would say a consistent run up is going to, like, you're going to take away as many variables as possible when trying to get the disc to go where you want to. And sometimes you may feel like you need to line up on a certain part of the tee pad, but as many times as you can run up and throw from the same part of the tee, it's going to really help, because there could be a difference of 5 feet on either side of that tee pad, and you deciding whether to run up more straight or more at an angle like that. Those are serious variables when you're hitting a gap that might be only 5 feet wide. Right. So I would say that's a big one.
All right, now say something nice about Trevor. He said something nice about you.
Well, I can say something nice about Trevor in a second, but first, to help your backhand, I'm gonna stay away from Trevor. Just kidding. One of the biggest keys, I think, especially when people are struggling with backhand, is dumb it all down, and the best way to do that is just throw standstill. So if there's something you're struggling with in your backhand, it's typically a timing problem that is causing whatever you're doing, and the best way to fix a timing problem is start from a standstill, then go to a one-stepper, then start from your feet being like kind of crossed and do a little X step, and then slowly build back to the X step. Because I think a lot of times people see pros throw and immediately go, I need to do the next step.
Yeah.
One of the things that changed how I perceive disc golf more than anything else is Paul came to one of our college practices when I was like a freshman or sophomore. I was still learning the game a lot more. And he was explaining why a player like me didn't need to do an X step. And then he was like, how much power do you think I lose when I do an X step? And we were all like, oh, hundreds of feet. And then he threw like standstill about 450-ish, maybe 500 with a Thunderbird at the time.
Wow.
And I watched that, and it came out of his hand just as fast as anything else I'd seen him throw. And I was like, that was gross. And he's like, all that matters is my timing. He's like, the X step's like a pacing, and it does get, like, it helps me get that extra 50, 60 feet. He's like, but if you're throwing 250 or 300, like, it's not going to help you. It's probably holding you back. You need to, like, until you're throwing a standstill over 300, then you can start worrying about, like, now, I'm not saying go to every tee and not do an X step, but like when you're trying to get better and work, it's a lot easier to fix things in a standstill than when you complicate it by adding an X step and there's way more timing that can go wrong.
And maybe even on a wooded course too, right? If you have a lot of variables on the sides.
Oh, I still go standstill. If I have a shot that I'm terrified of, I'm gonna hit the gap a lot more on a standstill. Trevor, I think, is the opposite on that.
Opposite.
But that's just comfort thing.
Yeah, the run up for me helps my timing a lot. It helps like get myself into a rhythm.
How much did you work on a standstill?
I don't know. I honestly don't remember. I'm sure it wasn't crazy long. I mean, when I started playing disc golf, I don't even remember how.
I'm wondering if that's like the
my thing is
difference.
I think it definitely reps, because if I'm in a standstill, I can get a little bit yippy with. It's tough for me to like find a starting and an ending point sometimes. Where on a run, when I do a run up, it's very easy for me to get into a rhythm, and like you just kind of set it all in motion. But I think that just comes down to reps. I don't think I
rep the heck out of standstills. But what I do nowadays for the timing thing, because it is true, like if you're standing there, how do you start and stop a standstill? If I'm standing there, the reason I like a standstill on shots that I'm scared of is I can set my feet exactly where I know they need to be. And so I don't have to worry about my X step putting my front foot too far forward or too far back, and then it's pulling me offline. I know exactly where my feet need to be. And then I just visualize, like in my head, timing wise, I'm like 1, 2, okay. Like I'm doing the X step in my head, and then I'm mimicking my hand, what my hand's gonna do during that X step. So then when I get to where I plant my front foot, which is where the standstill would start, then I know to reach back, and it helps my timing. But it was just a rep thing. I did a whole lot of standstill field work. Yeah,
absolutely. And any forehand tips? We kind of heard one. I mean, obviously,
tuck your disc into here so hard.
Yeah, we'll call that the crotch of the hand. So between your thumb and your pointer finger.
That's the biggest thing. I've like done clinics. I've done a ton of stuff teaching players how to throw forehands. They're always like, it wobbles, it does blah, blah, blah. And every time they show me their grip, it's just like barely touching here. Get that thing pushed into there real tight, and it's going to make your forehand come out so much smoother.
Yeah.
Stabilize. My honestly, with forehands for myself, I would say try something more understable if it's not working for you. Like don't try and overdo it. The forehand is one that if you try and really force it, that's where you get a lot of the wobble from. Like you should try and throw smooth. And if you can throw smooth at a slower speed, then just throw faster, understable discs, and you will you'll get more distance that way. I'd also say what Hunter's saying with the backhand is you'll have a lot more success. Like my lower body gets in my way a lot with forehands, timing wise. The timing of a forehand is very difficult, and it's a lot easier to throw a standstill forehand because you're only focusing on the arm and wrist levers rather than the hips. As soon as you add the hips a lot, it gets complicated because if you get the timing wrong, you're going to get the disc coming out nose up early with wobble, basically, because your arm's going to get behind. Everybody does the forehand a little bit differently, though. I'm not really great at it, but I would just say, like, my biggest tip is the same as Hunter's backhand tip, which is just you should just start with standstills. And also learn your forehand with approach discs, because that is where it's the most useful anyways. And just touch passes to the basket, just little poke shots, because like, here's the thing about a forehand. You get to look at your target the whole time. You don't get to do that on a backhand, which makes it such a valuable shot for 150, 200 feet and in, we'll say, approaches that
and
are like,
scrambling.
And scrambling, especially because you can look at your target. And so you should just get so good at that. And if you get good enough, you will pretty much always be better than a backhand because you're always looking at your target. And just those little touchy ones, and then slowly speed up, slowly disc up, but keep that mentality of like, actually, you know what my best forehand tip is too that Brody taught me is like, when you're throwing faster discs, a lot of times a forehand, you're thinking, I need to snap it as hard as I can to get spin. I'm snap your wrist. But with the slower discs and closer shots, you don't have to spin them as much. They're a little bit easier to throw. A lot of times you're throwing them on more like favorable angles. And I would still try to snap them really hard. And I wasn't super accurate. And then Brody actually told me to slow my wrist down on the closer shots, because you'll still get them to spin just fine and you'll be a lot more accurate. And that has helped my upshot game a ton.
Yeah, for sure. And this seems so apparent, but the thing I learned very quickly was I can't throw a 300-foot forehand until I can throw a 150-foot forehand accurately.
Yeah, you got to just find your limits of the forehand. That's the other thing. Is like, don't force it, because like there are a lot of courses around here, and we were just playing one the other day where like there were forehand lines that you just kind of get to there, and you're like, if you know you're not going to throw a quality shot, throw a backhand.
Yeah.
Like just don't even try. Like don't force it, because if you get too squirrely with a forehand, you really try to get after it, you can throw some really bad shots.
And you can hurt yourself very easily.
And that.
Yeah, and I think and I didn't realize this until like the last 6 months, but there's definitely a big difference between a turnover backhand and a forehand shot. They're not the same shot. No. And just, I think maybe a good forehand tip is also learn when to use what shot.
Yeah.
As well.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I appreciate you both being in the bag. I just wanted to, I had you here, wanted to ask some questions. Hopefully you all found it very helpful. Again, it's just always good to see different thought processes and perspectives of different players and different types of games, different types of discs. So that's really what we want to do, is add some value. Hopefully you all took away some nuggets from this. That's going to help your game as much as it helps mine, just being around these guys and everybody that comes through here, just picking up a little bit of everything is just key to just continuing to progress and get better at disc golf. So, well, we appreciate you guys very much. And you know what they say, if it's good,
keep it in the bag.
We'll see y'all next week.